Jake Miller sat inside his metal shelter and listened to the wind howling outside. The storm had been going for 3 days now and showed no signs of stopping. Lightning flashed through the small window every few seconds, and the thunder shook the walls. He had lived alone on this planet for 8 months now and was used to the terrible storms, but this one felt different. It felt angry. The planet Kepler 442b was not a kind place to live. The storms came without warning and could kill anyone caught outside. That was why his research team had left him here alone. They said it was too dangerous, but Jake needed to finish his work. He was studying the planet's weather patterns and the strange electromagnetic fields that caused these deadly storms. His data could help future colonists survive here. Jake checked his instruments again. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts. This storm was worse than anything he had recorded before. The metal walls of his shelter sparked occasionally as the energy fields passed over them. He was glad he had built this place strong and deep into the rocky ground. He was heating up some dried food when he heard something that made him freeze. It was not thunder or wind. Someone was pounding on his door. The sound came again and again, getting more desperate each time. Jake grabbed his emergency light and moved toward the door carefully. Who could be outside in this storm? Anyone caught in this weather should be dead by now. The pounding came again, and this time he heard a voice. It was high and musical, but filled with fear. The words were not in any human language he knew. Jake hesitated for a moment. Opening the door during an electromagnetic storm was dangerous, but someone was out there, and they needed help. He unlocked the heavy door and pulled it open. A gust of electrically charged wind hit him and made his hair stand up. Lightning flashed, and in that bright moment, he saw her. A tall figure stumbled into his shelter and collapsed on the floor. Jake quickly slammed the door shut and locked it again. The stranger was breathing hard and shaking from cold and fear. Jake held up his light to get a better look and almost dropped it in shock. The person on his floor was not human. She had long, pointed ears and skin that glowed with a soft blue light. Her hair was silver like moonlight, and her eyes were large and green like emeralds. She was wearing clothes made from some kind of plant material that was torn and dirty. She looked up at Jake, and her eyes went wide with terror. She pressed herself against the wall and started speaking rapidly in her strange musical language. Even though he could not understand her words, Jake could tell she was begging. Her voice shook with fear, and she held up her hands as if trying to protect herself from him. Jake realized that she was more afraid of him than he was of her. He set down his light and backed away slowly. He held up his hands to show he had no weapons and spoke in the calmest voice he could manage. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you. You're safe here." The alien woman did not understand his words, but she seemed to notice his gentle tone. She stopped talking but kept watching him with those huge, frightened eyes. Jake could see that she was hurt. There was a deep cut on her left arm that was bleeding blue blood. Her clothes were burned in several places and she looked exhausted. Jake pointed to her injured arm and then to his medical supplies on the shelf. He moved very slowly and kept talking in a soft voice, even though she could not understand him. "You're hurt," he said. "Let me help you. I have medicine." She shook her head and pressed harder against the wall. She spoke again in her language, and this time Jake caught a few words that sounded like Galactic Standard. Most colonies learned basic Galactic Standard for trade and communication. Jake tried speaking in that language instead. "Please," he said, in Galactic Standard. "You are injured. I want to help." Her eyes widened again, but this time with surprise instead of just fear. She spoke hesitantly in broken Galactic Standard. You are human?" Her accent was strange and musical. "Yes," Jake said. "My name is Jake. What is your name?" She was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the storm raged on and lightning lit up the small window. Finally, she spoke. I am Lyra. My people call your kind destroyers, sky demons who bring death. Jake felt his heart sink. He understood now why she was so afraid. Her people had myths about humans being monsters. He sat down on the floor across from her to make himself seem less threatening. I am not a destroyer, he said gently. I am a scientist. I study the storms to help people. I will not hurt you, Lyra. She studied his face in the dim light. Her blue skin was still glowing softly, and Jake realized it might be how her people saw in the dark. She was beautiful in a way that was completely alien but somehow familiar too. The storm, she said finally. My hunting group. We were separated. I ran. The lightning was everywhere. I saw your light. She paused and winced as she moved her injured arm. I had no choice. Outside is death. Jake nodded. You made the right choice. This storm is very bad. You would have died out there. He pointed to her arm again. Please let me treat your wound. If it gets infected, you could still die. Lyra looked at her arm and then back at Jake. She was clearly in pain and losing blood. After a long moment, she nodded slightly. If you try to hurt me, I will fight, she warned. I understand, Jake said. He moved slowly to get his medical kit. As he prepared the supplies, he wondered what this meeting would mean. He was the first human this alien woman had ever seen, and she was definitely the first of her kind that he had met. Outside, the storm continued to rage, as if the planet itself was angry about their unlikely meeting. Jake moved toward Lyra with the medical supplies in his hands. She tensed up and her blue skin glowed brighter for a moment. He could see the fear in her green eyes, but also the pain from her wound. The cut on her arm was deep and still bleeding. Her strange blue blood. I'm going to clean the wound first, Jake explained in Galactic Standard as he knelt down a safe distance from her. It might hurt, but it will help prevent infection. Lyra nodded, but kept her good hand ready to push him away if needed. Jake soaked a clean cloth with antiseptic and very gently touched it to the edge of her cut. She hissed in pain and jerked back, but did not pull her arm away completely. I know it hurts, Jake said softly, but this will kill any bad things that might make you sick. As he worked, Lyra watched his face carefully. Jake tried to be as gentle as possible and kept talking to her in a calm voice. He told her what he was doing with each step, even though he was not sure how much she understood. Her Galactic Standard was limited, but she seemed to follow most of what he said. Your blood is blue, Jake observed as he cleaned the wound. That's interesting. My blood is red. Red blood, Lyra repeated. She seemed surprised by this. The old stories say demons have black blood like the storm clouds. Jake smiled a little. Well, I'm definitely not a demon. Just a human scientist who happened to be in the right place when you needed help. He applied a healing gel to her cut and then carefully wrapped it with bandages. Lyra watched every movement, but gradually began to relax. When he was finished, she examined his work and moved her arm carefully. It feels better, she admitted. Thank you. You're welcome, Jake said. He packed up the medical supplies and then offered her a bottle of water. You need to drink something. The storm's radiation can make you very sick if you don't stay hydrated, Lyra took the bottle and sniffed it carefully before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened. This water is so clean, she said. How do you make it like this? I have a machine that filters out all the bad things, Jake explained. Would you like some food too? You look like you haven't eaten in a while. She nodded and Jake prepared some of his dried rations. It was not fancy food, but it was nutritious and filling. Lyra ate slowly at first, and then more quickly as her hunger took over. While she ate, Jake studied her more carefully. She was taller than most humans with long, graceful limbs. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders and seemed to shimmer with its own light. The blue glow from her skin was soft and beautiful like moonlight on water. Her clothes were made from woven plant fibers that looked incredibly fine and strong. "Tell me about your people," Jake said when she finished eating. "Do you all live on this planet?" Lyra set down the empty food container and considered his question. "We are Athani," she said. "We have lived here for thousands of years. We build our homes in the great trees that grow in the valleys. The trees give us light and protection from most storms." "Most storms?" Jake asked. "The storms are getting worse," Lyra said sadly. "They come more often now and last longer. Many trees have died. My people are afraid we will have to leave our homes soon." Jake felt excited. This was exactly what his research was about. "How long have the storms been getting worse?" "Since I was a child," Lyra said. "Maybe 20 of your years. The elders say it started when the sky demons first came to our world." Jake's excitement faded. Her people blamed humans for the worsening storms. That would make his job much harder if he ever met more of them. But his data showed something different. "Lyra," he said carefully, "I've been studying these storms for months. My instruments show that the problem started long before humans came here. Something deep inside the planet is causing the electromagnetic fields to become unstable." She frowned. "That cannot be true. The elders know the old stories. They say the demons brought the angry skies with them." "I understand why your people would think that," Jake said. "The timing seems to match, but sometimes two things happen at the same time without one causing the other." Lyra looked confused, so Jake tried to explain it differently. "Let's say you see lightning and then hear thunder. The lightning doesn't cause the thunder. They both come from the same storm." She nodded slowly. "So you think humans and the bad storms both came from the same, bigger storm?" "Something like that. Yes. I think the planet's core started changing about 50 years ago. That made the electromagnetic fields unstable, which caused worse storms. Humans detected the electromagnetic activity from space and came to investigate. We didn't cause the problem, but we arrived because of it." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Outside, the storm was starting to weaken. The lightning flashes were less frequent, and the thunder was not as loud. She seemed to be thinking hard about what Jake had told her. "If this is true," she said finally, "then my people have been wrong about humans for 20 years. "It's possible," Jake said gently. "But I understand why they would be suspicious. Your world was peaceful, and then suddenly there were storms and strange beings from the sky. Anyone would make that connection. Can you prove what you say is true?" Lyra asked. Jake nodded and got up to show her his equipment. "These machines measure the electromagnetic fields and map how they change over time. Look at this." He showed her a display with colored lines and graphs. "This shows the field strength going back 60 years. You can see it started getting unstable long before humans arrived." Lyra leaned closer to look at the display. Her eyes were wide with wonder. "These marks show the past?" she asked. "Yes. And these numbers here show when the first human ships detected the signals from your planet. See how the signals were already strong by then?" She studied the data for several minutes. Jake could see her intelligent mind working to understand what she was seeing. Finally, she sat back with a troubled expression. "If you are right, then my people need to know this," she said. "But they will not believe me if I just tell them. They think humans are evil." "Maybe we can work together to show them the truth," Jake suggested. "I need to finish my research to help stop the storms. Your people need the storms to stop to save their homes. We want the same thing." Lyra looked at him with those green eyes. "You would help my people even though they call you a demon?" "Of course," Jake said. "I became a scientist to help people. It doesn't matter if they're human or Athani. Everyone deserves to live safely." For the first time since she had arrived, Lyra smiled. It transformed her face and made her even more beautiful. Perhaps the old stories are wrong about more than just the storms, she said. The storm continued for another full day and night. Jake and Lyra were trapped together in the small shelter, but they used the time well. They taught each other their languages and shared stories about their peoples. Jake learned that Lyra was a scout for her hunting group and knew the wilderness better than almost anyone in her clan. "We hunt the storm beasts," Lyra explained as she showed Jake how to weave plant fibers together. "They are big animals that eat the electromagnetic energy. When storms come, the beasts get very dangerous. My job is to track them and warn my people where they will go." Jake was fascinated. "You can predict where the electromagnetic fields will be strongest by watching these animals?" "Yes. The beasts always know before we do. They feel the energy in the air and move toward it. But lately they have been acting strange. They run in circles and make terrible noises. I think the changing storms confuse them too." This gave Jake an idea. "Lyra, can you feel electromagnetic fields like the beasts can?" She nodded. "All Athani can feel them a little. Some like me can feel them very strongly. That is how I knew this shelter was safe. The metal walls block the energy fields." Jake showed her his instruments again. "These machines measure the same fields you can feel naturally. If we work together, we might be able to map the field patterns much better than I could alone." They spent hours comparing what Lyra could sense with what Jake's machines detected. She could feel changes in the electromagnetic fields almost an hour before his equipment registered them. Her natural abilities were far more sensitive than his technology. "This is amazing," Jake said as he recorded her observations. "You can sense field fluctuations at levels my instruments can barely detect. With your help, I could create much more accurate predictions of when and where storms will form." Lyra seemed pleased that her abilities were useful. "My grandmother always said our sensitivity to the fields was a gift from the planet itself. She taught me to listen to the energy currents like music." "Can you teach me?" Jake asked. Lyra laughed. "Humans cannot feel the fields. Your bodies are made differently." "Maybe not," Jake said. "But I could learn to understand what you feel. That would help us work together better." For the next several hours, Lyra tried to explain how she sensed the electromagnetic fields. She used words like warm and cold, smooth and rough to describe sensations that Jake could not feel. But gradually he began to understand the patterns she described. "Right now the field above us feels like rough cloth," Lyra said with her eyes closed. "But to the east it feels smooth like water. That means the storm is moving away from us toward the east." Jake checked his instruments and confirmed that she was right. The storm was indeed moving eastward and beginning to weaken. While they worked together, Jake told Lyra about his research. "I think the planet's electromagnetic field is unstable because something deep in the core is changing. Maybe the orbit of the two moons is affecting the liquid metal at the center." "The moons have always been there," Lyra pointed out. "Yes, but they move in very slow cycles. Every few thousand years they line up in ways that could affect the planet's core. My data suggests we're entering one of those alignment periods now." Lyra considered this. "How long will it last?" "Without intervention, probably several hundred years. The storms will keep getting worse until they make the planet uninhabitable. But if we can build devices to stabilize the field, we might be able to stop the process." "What kind of devices?" Lyra asked. Jake pulled up plans on his computer. "Electromagnetic field generators placed at key points around the planet. They would work like anchors to hold the field steady. But I would need help from your people to build them." "Why would you need us?" "Because you can sense the fields naturally. You could guide us to exactly the right locations and help us adjust the generators for maximum effect. My instruments are good, but your natural senses are better." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Jake could see she was thinking hard about something. Finally, she spoke. "If we helped you build these devices, would the storms really stop?" "I believe. So yes, it would take time and a lot of work, but I think we could save your world." Our world, Lyra corrected him. Humans live here too now. Jake smiled. You're right, our world. As the storm finally began to clear, Lyra stood up and looked out the small window. The lightning was gone and the wind was dying down. Soon it would be safe to go outside. My people will be looking for me, she said. I should return to them and tell them I am alive. Jake felt disappointed that she was leaving, but he understood. Of course, your family must be worried about you. Jake, Lyra said, turning back to him. Will you come with me? The question surprised him. Come with you where? To meet my people, to show them your data and explain about the storms. They need to hear this from you. Jake felt excited but also nervous. Do you think they will listen? Or will they try to kill me as soon as they see me? I don't know, Lyra admitted. But I think we have to try. If we don't work together, both our peoples will suffer. The storms are getting worse. Soon even the great trees will not protect us. Jake looked around his shelter. It had been his home for 8 months, but it was also a prison. He had stayed here alone because he thought he had to. Now Lyra was offering him a chance to do something much more important. All right, he said. I'll come with you. But we should bring some of my equipment to show your people the data. Lyra smiled again. Good, but first you should know something about my people. We are not all the same. Some will welcome new ideas. Others will want to kill you before you can speak. The elders will decide what happens to you. That's not very encouraging, Jake said. I will speak for you, Lyra promised. I will tell them how you helped me and how you want to save our world, but you must be very careful. Some of my people have lost family members in the storms. They blame humans for those deaths. Jake nodded. He understood that this would be dangerous. But it was also the most important thing he could do. If he could convince Lyra's people to work with him, they might actually be able to stop the storms and save the planet. When do we leave? He asked. As soon as the electromagnetic fields settle completely, probably tomorrow morning. That will give us the best chance to travel safely. Jake began packing his most important equipment. Tomorrow he would leave his shelter for the first time in months and enter a world he had only studied from a distance. He would meet an alien people who considered him a demon and try to convince them he was actually their salvation. It was terrifying and exciting at the same time. The next morning, Jake and Lyra left the shelter together. The sky was clear, but Jake could still feel electricity in the air from the recent storm. Lyra led him through terrain he had only seen from satellite images. The land was more beautiful than he had imagined, with strange plants that glowed softly and streams of water that sparkled with mineral deposits. They walked for most of the day before reaching the edge of the great forest where Lyra's people lived. The trees were enormous beyond anything Jake had ever seen. They rose hundreds of meters into the sky, and their trunks were wide enough to hold entire buildings. The bark glowed with a soft blue light similar to Lyra's skin. The trees and people have lived together for thousands of years, Lyra explained as they approached. We help them grow, and they protect us from storms. But look how many are dying. Jake could see what she meant. Many of the giant trees had dark patches on. Their bark and their light was dim or gone completely. Some had fallen and lay across the forest floor like fallen giants. The electromagnetic storms are killing them, Lyra said sadly. When a tree dies, the families living in it must find new homes. But there are fewer and fewer healthy trees each year. They climbed a winding path that spiraled around one of the largest trees. Jake was amazed to see that the tree was hollow inside, with rooms and bridges carved into the living wood. Soft light came from the walls themselves, and the air smelled of flowers and growing things. Lyra, a voice called from above. A young Ithani woman with golden hair swung down on a rope bridge. When she saw Jake, she stopped suddenly, and her eyes went wide. Amy, this is Jake, Lyra said quickly. He is the human I told you about. The one who helped me during the storm. Amy stared at Jake with a mixture of fear and curiosity. You brought a demon here? She whispered. He is not a demon. Lyra said firmly. He is a scientist, and he wants to help us stop the storms. More. Athani appeared on the bridges above. Soon there was a crowd of them looking down at Jake with expressions ranging from fear to anger to curiosity. Jake tried to look as non-threatening as possible and kept his hands visible. The elders must be told immediately, someone called from above. I am taking him to see Elder Maya now, Lyra replied. She turned to Jake. Stay close to me and do not make any sudden movements. My people are frightened. They climbed higher into the tree until they reached a large chamber near the top. The walls were covered with intricate carvings that seemed to tell the history of the Athani people. In the center of the room sat an elderly woman with silver hair and wise eyes. This was Elder Maya. Lyra, Maya said as they entered. I am glad you are safe. We feared you were lost in the storm. Her eyes moved to Jake, and her expression became serious. But why have you brought this creature here? Lyra stepped forward. Honored Elder, this is Jake Miller. He saved my life during the storm, and he has important information about why the storms are getting worse. A demon speaks and you listen? Maya asked. Have you forgotten the teachings of your ancestors? I have not forgotten anything, Lyra said respectfully. But I have learned that the old stories may not be completely true. Jake has data that shows the storms began before humans came to our world. Jake stepped forward carefully and spoke in his best galactic standard. Honored Elder, I know your people have no reason to trust me, but I have spent months studying the electromagnetic storms. I believe I know what is causing them and how they can be stopped. Maya studied him for a long moment. You claim you can stop the storms that have plagued us for 20 years? Not alone, Jake said. I would need help from your people. You have natural abilities that humans do not possess. Together, we might be able to stabilize the planet's electromagnetic field. Show her the data, Lyra urged. Jake carefully unpacked his portable computer and showed Maya the same graphs he had shown Lyra. He explained how the electromagnetic instability had started decades before humans arrived and how it would continue to get worse unless something was done. Maya listened carefully and asked intelligent questions. Jake could see that she was very wise and understood more about the technical details than he had expected. If what you say is true, Maya said finally, then my people have been wrong about humans for many years. That is difficult to accept. I understand, Jake said. But right now, the important thing is stopping the storms before they destroy all. The great trees. Maya was quiet for several minutes. Jake could hear angry voices outside as word spread through the tree that a human was meeting with the elder. Finally, Maya spoke. Lyra tells me you treated her injuries and asked for nothing in return. She says you shared your food and water and protected her from the storm. These are not the actions of a demon. I did what anyone should do for someone in need, Jake said. Not. Everyone would, Maya replied. Even among my own people, there are some who would not help a stranger in a storm. She stood up slowly. I will consider what you have told me, but first the council must meet. All the elders from all the trees must hear your words and decide together. Jake felt hope rising in his chest. She was not rejecting his proposal immediately. However, Maya continued, there are many among my people who will want to kill you as soon as they see you. You must understand that we have lost many lives to these storms. Families have been torn apart. Children have died. Your people may not have caused the storms, but the anger is still real. I understand, Jake said, but I hope they will see that working together is the only way to save everyone. Maya nodded. Lyra, will you take responsibility for this human's safety while he is among us? I will, Lyra said without hesitation. Then we will call the council for tomorrow night. You will have one chance to convince all the elders that your plan can work. If they reject you, Maya did not finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear. As they left the elders' chamber, Jake felt the weight of what lay ahead. Tomorrow night he would face a council of alien leaders whose people considered him a monster. He would have to convince them to trust him with their lives and the future of their world. "Are you afraid?" Lyra asked as they walked through the Tree City. "Terrified," Jake admitted, "but also hopeful. If we can make this work, we could save both our peoples." "Then we must make it work," Lyra said firmly. "The alternative is too terrible to imagine." That night, Jake lay awake thinking about his presentation to the council. He had one chance to change the minds of an entire people. Everything depended on what he said tomorrow night. The council meeting took place in the largest tree at the center of the forest. Jake had never seen so many Athani in one place before. Dozens of elders from different clans sat in a great circle, while hundreds more watched from the galleries above. The air crackled with tension, and Jake could feel the hostility from many of the gathered people. Elder Maya stood in the center of the circle and called for silence. "We are here to listen to the human Jake Miller who claims he can stop the storms that have plagued our world. Lyra of the Silver Tree clan speaks for him." Jake stepped forward with his equipment and began his presentation. He showed the electromagnetic data and explained how the planet's core instability was causing the storms. Many of the elders listened carefully, but others shook their heads in disbelief. "Why should we trust the word of a sky demon?" called out Elder Thorn from the Ironwood clan. "My grandson died in the last great storm. How do we know this is not some trick to make us lower our guard?" "Because I am willing to risk my life to prove it," Jake said. "I propose that we work together to place electromagnetic stabilizers at key points around the planet. Your people's natural sensitivity to the fields would guide us to the exact locations needed." "And if your devices fail?" asked Elder Sage, from the Golden Branch clan. "What happens to us then?" "Then the storms will continue to get worse until they destroy all life on this planet," Jake said honestly. "But if we do nothing, that will happen anyway. At least this way we have a chance." The debate continued for hours. Some elders seemed convinced by Jake's data, while others remained suspicious. Finally, Elder Maya called for a vote. It was close, but the majority agreed to give Jake's plan a chance. "However," Maya announced, "the human must prove his commitment. He will lead the first mission himself to the most dangerous location. If he survives and the device works, then we will consider placing more stabilizers." Jake's heart sank. The most dangerous location was the Storm Crown, a mountain peak where electromagnetic activity was so intense that it created permanent lightning. No one had ever survived going there during an active storm period. "I will go with him," Lyra announced. Standing up from her place in the gallery, "Lyra, no," Maya said. "It is too dangerous. If Jake is willing to risk his life for our people, then I should be willing to risk mine for both our peoples," Lyra replied. "Besides, he will need someone who can sense the electromagnetic fields to guide him." Amy stood up next to her cousin. "I will go too. We are the best scouts in our clan." Other young Ethani began volunteering as well. Jake was amazed that they were willing to help him after their people had considered him an enemy just days before. 3 days later, a small group set out for the Storm Crown. Jake carried the electromagnetic stabilizer device, while Lyra, Amy, and 2 other Ethani scouts named Beth and Rose guided them through the dangerous terrain. The closer they got to the mountain, the more intense the electromagnetic fields became. "The energy here feels angry," Lyra said as they climbed the rocky slopes. "Like the planet itself is in pain." Jake's instruments confirmed what she was sensing. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts and getting stronger as they climbed higher. Lightning began flashing around the peak, even though there were no clouds in the sky. "We need to reach the exact center of the field," Jake explained. "The stabilizer has to be placed where the electromagnetic forces are strongest." They climbed for hours through increasingly dangerous conditions. The air itself seemed to spark, and Jake could feel his hair standing on end. Twice they had to Take shelter behind rocks when particularly intense lightning strikes hit near them. There, Lyra pointed to a flat area near the peak. That is where the field is strongest. I can feel it pulling at me like a whirlpool. They made their way to the spot Lyra had indicated. Jake began setting up the stabilizer device while the others kept watch for lightning strikes. The electromagnetic interference was so strong that some of his equipment stopped working properly. "Jake," Amy called out, "something is wrong. The field is getting stronger much faster than it should." Jake looked at his readings and felt his blood turn cold. "There's a feedback loop starting. The mountain's natural electromagnetic activity is resonating with itself. If it reaches critical levels, it could trigger a massive storm that would affect the entire planet." "How long do we have?" Lyra asked. "Maybe 10 minutes before it becomes unstoppable." Jake worked frantically to finish setting up the stabilizer. But as he connected the final components, a massive lightning bolt struck the device directly. The explosion knocked everyone to the ground, and when the smoke cleared, the stabilizer was destroyed. "It's too late," Jake said, looking at his readings. "The feedback has reached critical levels. In a few minutes, this whole mountain will explode with electromagnetic energy." "We have to run," Beth said. "We'll never make it far enough in time," Jake replied. Then he had an idea. "Lyra, can you and the others link your natural field sensitivity together? Like joining your abilities?" "Yes, we can share our sensing, but why?" "Would that help? Because if you can all focus together, you might be able to disrupt the feedback pattern manually, like singing a different note to stop an echo." "That could kill us," Rose pointed out. "The energy levels up here are already more than our bodies can handle. If we don't try, it will definitely kill us when the mountain explodes," Jake said. The 4 Athani women looked at each other and nodded. They joined hands in a circle around Jake and began to concentrate. Their skin started glowing brighter as they linked their abilities together. Jake watched his instruments as they tried to disrupt the electromagnetic feedback. "It's working," he shouted over the growing wind, "but you need to push harder." The women's skin was now glowing so bright it was painful to look at. Jake could see that the effort was draining them quickly. Lyra's face was pale and she was shaking. "From the strain." "I'm losing it," Amy gasped. "Hold on," Lyra urged. "We're almost there." But the feedback was too strong. One by one, the other women collapsed from exhaustion, leaving only Lyra still trying to hold the disruption pattern. She was glowing like a star, and Jake could see that the energy was tearing her apart. Without thinking, Jake grabbed her hands. The electromagnetic energy flowed through him like liquid fire. It should have killed him instantly, but somehow his human nervous system was different enough from Athani physiology that he could absorb some of the overflow. Together, they pushed against the feedback pattern until finally it broke apart. The mountain's electromagnetic field stabilized, and the immediate danger passed. But both Jake and Lyra collapsed, unconscious from the effort. Jake woke up 3 days later in the medical chamber of the Silver Tree. Lyra was in the bed next to him, recovering from severe electromagnetic burns. Amy and the other scouts were also being treated, but they would all survive. "You saved our lives," Amy told him when she saw he was awake. "When you grabbed Lyra's hands, you absorbed enough energy to keep it from killing her." "We saved each other," Jake replied. "I couldn't have done it without all of you." Elder Maya entered the chamber. "The stabilizer device was destroyed, but your actions proved something important. Humans and Athani can work together to control electromagnetic fields in ways neither could manage alone. The Council has voted to approve your full plan." Over the following months, Jake and teams of Athani volunteers traveled across the planet, placing electromagnetic stabilizers at key locations. Each mission was dangerous, but they learned to work together better each time. Jake's technology combined with Athani natural abilities proved to be incredibly effective. The storms began to weaken within weeks of the first stabilizers going online. Trees that had been dying started to recover. The constant fear that had haunted both species for decades, finally began to fade. A year later, Jake stood outside his old shelter, looking at the research station that had been built around it. Human scientists and Ethani researchers worked side by side studying the planet's recovered ecosystem. The place where fear had first turned to understanding had become a symbol of cooperation between their peoples. Lyra joined him on the observation deck. Her arm had healed completely, and she now served as the chief liaison between human and Ethani research teams. "Do you ever miss being alone in your little shelter?" she asked. Jake laughed. "Not for a second. This is so much better than anything I could have accomplished alone." "The storms that almost destroyed us ended up bringing us together," Lyra observed. "Perhaps the planet knew what it was doing after all." Jake looked out at the forest, where both human buildings and Ethani tree cities could be seen peacefully, coexisting. The sky was clear and calm, with no sign of the electromagnetic chaos that had once threatened everything. "Maybe you're right," he said. "Maybe the planet just needed us to learn to work together." As the twin moons rose over their shared world, Jake and Lyra watched human children and young Ethani playing together in the research station's gardens. The future looked brighter than either of their peoples could have imagined when they first met during that terrible storm.